Meeting is being recorded.
Recording in progress.
So we're going to wait for a couple of minutes until all of them come inside. Just make yourself comfortable. And hi, Andy. Hello, hello. And if you have a face that you wish to show, now is the time. So you can have yes. Hi, Kate. Hi, Taekyung. Thanks for showing your faces. So we know that we're not speaking to bots. Hi, Joe. Hi, Anna. Hi, Vlad. Hi, Fred Samandari.
Hey, Google
Yes.
Lights.
Hello, Marino. Hello, Imogen.
Is
Roland.
the light navy blue?
C. Tucker. Tom Sweeney. And make sure you're muted as well. Please. Yeah. Hi, Kirsty. Van Der Poel. And we have Brenda Banning. Shashi Sharma. Tim Croft. Anna Skilling. Nope. I'm only going to mention the names who's showing me videos. I want to see the faces. We're going to wait for a few more minutes until everyone kicks in or shows their face. Hi, Richard. Hi, Richard Keeble. Two Richards, Holstein and Keeble. And a lot of faceless. Welcome in, welcome in. We are going to give some more time for people to come in. The second lunchtime session of this year. And we're getting about 200 plus registrations. So let's see how many people can make it today. And make sure you mute yourself, please. Make sure you kindly mute ourselves so you're not hearing your munchings or your office secret IP documents. Thank you. One more minute before we invite people. Hi, Natasha Savage, Joe Cole, Blake's, more videos, good. Fantastic. Cool, great. We're gonna start. It's been 5 minutes. So thank you everyone for coming today. And here, this is one of my favorite parts of this evening. So I want you guys to pick your favorite emoji. I'm post it here in the comment. So if you're coming from Otatahi or anywhere, just make sure you are able to give me.
Know any of that.
Cool. You can copy and paste from here. Can everyone make sure that you're muted and tell us where you're coming from so we can get to know you. Yeah. Hi, Tom from Otatahi and Johan from Otatahi. Vlad, Liz Eden, a lot of Otatahi, obviously. We are Canterbury Tech. Oh, wait, we have Jess from Wellington. Hello. And Natasha from Greymouth. Welcome in. And Pauline, Otatahi. We are missing emoji there, Pauline. Joe, hi, honey. And Tasman. Okay. Hi, Neil McAndrew. And Kate Ellery from Auckland. Oh, we're having one Auckland crowd. And Jared Plant from Australia, who is also going to be speaking today. Fantastic. Hi from Auckland, Simon. No, we're missing an emoji. I'm not accepting that. Tim Crott from Wellington. Blake from Auckland. Hello, hi. And a lot of Atata here again. Jen from Aotearoa. Oh, Nelson, fantastic. And Mark Rhodes. Oh, is feeling energetic. Yeah, he's feeling really excited. Hello, Mark. And Paul is feeling happy. Yeah. I am Otatahi and I am this mood. A big hi to everyone too. Hoo-hoo, yes. And Simon Hall, the burger is not in the list of emojis. Sorry. kitchen bench. Woohoo! All right, team. Thank you everyone for signing up, turning up. Obviously this wouldn't have been possible for with the founder of Canterbury Tech who's been with us for a long time, and the sponsors for us who's been supporting us for a long time. UC Business School is one of our biggest annual sponsors, and they have like more relevant MBA programs and executive education if you want to go on site. And they also now have subscription program service, so you can take as many courses as you want to have in a year. So make sure you check them out on AWS, and they're jumping in again to sponsor us for our yearly annual sponsor. Thank you again. They're known for the infrastructure services, and they're very really open to talking to any of the founders, any of the companies. So make sure you talk to them. Thank you, SiteHost, for hosting our website on a service run by Solar Energy, Go Green Tech, and Ridiculous Digital for ridiculously ranking our Google in Google with our SEO services, and Integration Works for helping us with our integrating our financial systems, and Crescent Consulting for helping us with our recruitment. And we also have an events person who's going to start from today. So thank you again for all the sponsors and supporters. And the next monthly event is going to happen in Christchurch City Council. We kind of have planning to run like 2 or 3 sessions every year in the City Council because we're growing big. So make sure you're signing up for that. And the members are obviously free. If you're a non-member, make sure you sign up for that as well. And we're going to talk about re-architecting your SaaS product. So that is the main April monthly event. The next one that we are doing is the AI Lunch and Learn. So here we are partnering with New Zealand AI and Justin Flitter. I've worked with him for I've been part of his AI day and like a competition as when I was a founder. And they are running a book lunch and learn session with the team from New Zealand AI, and they're giving for Canterbury Tech members just 1 hour really good use cases in terms of types of AI use cases, capabilities and limitations for getting everyone supercharged, using their products and services to supercharge your organization using AI. Please make sure you visit the newzealand.ai/Canterbury Tech for a particular landing page. And the important thing, the major event for Canterbury Tech is the Tech Week. So every year we, from last year, we started organizing some of the Canterbury Tech's entire ecosystem and events together collectively called Tech Week Hub. And this year we are starting to put as a Tech Fest that is running on Fridays with different themes for every year. And this year we have secured Turanga as our major place, so meaning more better infrastructure and more audiences and space to have this as such. So we're expecting about 1,000 to 2,000 people this year, and many of the events are free to paid. So make sure you sign up as soon as possible with the just Google Tech Fest 2024, and you'll be able to see Canterbury Tech there as well. So we're going to go into our first March lunchtime session and introducing Joel. So Joel Deutscher works for Planit, and he's responsible for enabling Planit, a team of amazing talent to drive quality leadership across the practices, technology innovation, including AI. So he has about 20 plus years within the quality industry, and he's covered many roles ranging from consulting, team management, technical innovation, and driving organizational strategy. And he's going to talk about how he has enabled Planit's team to include many of these tools, and how he has and talk about the impacts of AI on quality engineering and testing as well. Thank you so much for being here, Joel. And Jared, who's also from Planit, he's going to jump in and help for details and more questions towards it as well. So make sure during this entire session, you have all your questions sent to us in the chat. I'll be going over it to make sure that it aligns with the context of today. And don't be disappointed if we don't get to all your questions by today. You are more than welcome to send it to us or to Joel if it's really pressing, but we'll try to cover as much as we could within this time. Thank you again, and I'm going to pass on the baton to Joel, and he can. Fantastic.
Fantastic. Thank you, Seki. I really appreciate the warm welcome, and thanks everybody for joining here today. Look, we believe that AI is going to be the future in quality, and we believe this because in my role, I have the privilege of looking forward and focusing on what's next. And I've got an amazing team that supports me. In fact, as Sika mentioned, we've got Jared Plant with us. He's our Gen AI product owner. So he'll be giving some more details on those, on our implementation. In terms of what we wanted to cover today, I wanted to look at briefly why Gen AI for quality. I wanted to look at sort of the risks around Gen AI, then dive a bit more into our journey with the rollout and the challenges, and then what are those lessons learned? So we believe that AI is transformational. In fact, I love this stat. So this is Gartner puts the release of ChatGPT back in November 22 up there with the release of the iPhone and the World Wide Web. This is a massive company to be on. And, many argue the pre-trained transformers aren't even really AI. So, but what I find funny is that AI has been around for such a long time, solving really complex problems, assisting with large data sets, protein folding algorithms. But it's only when it can write a limerick or an email that it really grabs the world's attention and everyone starts freaking out that it's going to take our jobs. So it really was the first general purpose AI tool. And obviously it became hugely sort of sparked what you might call the AI arms race. It'd be no surprise then that Gartner puts Gen AI right here at the top, the peak of inflated expectations in the hype cycle. And we would see this from all of the applications that are coming through.
Peak of inflated expectations.
So it is really a great place to be. Now, of course, what happens after the peak of inflated expectations is, it's the trough of disillusionment when all of the great things that we thought it could do, we don't get the benefits from it. But we're not there yet. In fact, 80% of CIOs and tech leaders are planning full Gen AI adoption within 3 years. In fact, the ANZ region, which we know is ahead of the rest of the world, was even higher. They're at 87%. We're seeing massive amounts of funding and budgets put towards this. KPMG, EY, PwC launched Chat PwC. And I quite like the fact that their legal teams have partnered with Harvey AI. So if there's any Suits fans out there. And it's not cheap. PwC is $1 billion in funding. EY and Deloitte are 1.4. KPMG's up the game to 2 billion. And we sort of wanted to think, well, why are they investing so heavily? Well, there's a great study from the Harvard Business School. This gave 750 consultants from the Boston Consulting Group access to standard ChatGPT 4 without any specialized fine-tuning, and found that the consultants performed 25% faster and produced work that was 40% higher quality. Now, it sort of brings the question around, is AI the great equalizer here? Because the average consultants increased by 17%, but the below average consultants increased by 43%. So what we see is that even if you didn't have the experience, you had access to the experience with AI. So this created a more level playing field. Of course, the opposite is true, as we're seeing with more technical activities. So the world's best tools won't help you if you don't know what you're trying to get out of them. So when we talk about coding, we're seeing this gap. When you ask for code of a generative AI tool, it'll give you some code. And if you don't know that it's good code or bad code, you can copy and paste it and it may run and off you go. At least with Stack Overflow, which was always the joke of how developers worked, it gave you the best answer and some of the reasons why it's the best code. And we found this same result we're using Gen AI tools for our automation code. So maybe it's task dependent. However you look at it, it's definitely going to impact. I love this quote from Professor Karim that says, AI won't replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI. So you're in the right place here today. The good news is regardless of the outcomes, the consultants who used AI had an increased satisfaction. So the whole idea of a co-pilot or a pair program is great. It provides you an ability to get that support, get the task that you don't like doing done more quickly, and there's no judgment if you ask a stupid question. Interestingly, though, I was lucky enough to do some AI roadshows across Australia and New Zealand, and 26% of organisations didn't actually know what their view of AI was. That was the average across Australia and New Zealand. It's no surprise that New Zealand was further ahead with only 17% not aware of it. So it's interesting to see that we've got companies who are looking, 87% are going full Gen AI adoption, yet a lot of employees don't actually know what the view is of it. So look, we wanted to have a look and say, look, what is the actual opportunity for AI and quality? How can we use it to deliver our services and our customers to deliver quality applications faster? Gartner had identified these areas in what they've called their AI use case prism for software development. To me, it's a triangle, but they've got a great marketing team. There's some obvious ones here, such as unit test creation, data generation, and there's some harder ones around defect prediction and self-healing. There's probably some another factor here which looks at the data, but we won't dive into that. So we wanted to know, how could we get fast feedback on these items? How could we figure out which one of these is that we're going to provide the most benefit? So we went big bang and we rolled out a private GPT instance. And Jared's going to give you a lot more details on this shortly. This is not how you would roll out a typical piece of technology. Normally it's piloted, evaluated, and then it's phased in. Let's see how it works. But we wanted to do this in a very fast way, and we did this deliberately. Firstly, we've got a culture of curiosity and innovation. We saw an opportunity to expedite tasks, and we knew we could do it safely. We also had almost 20% of our employees already using public GPT, and we had no idea what they were using it for. We knew we wanted it to be private, we knew we wanted it to be protected and secure, and we wanted it to be a platform that we could build on. So Jared and the team started building the implementation, and I started working on the business side of things. How are we going to roll this out? What are the processes we need, the guidelines to get this rolled out? Well, yeah, Jared probably had the easier job there because we went through the full range of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Just like almost every company we're seeing today. What if our customers find out we're using Gen AI? What if our customers find out we aren't using Gen AI and they think we're dinosaurs? Should we pretend it doesn't exist? We had sort of a range of views, from our CEO, who's a visionary, who was all in and full steam ahead, to our legal and security compliance teams who were doing their jobs trying to slow things down. And we're seeing this with our customers as well. As with any new tool or technology, there's some uncertainty, but the fear of AI was expressed from almost every team within the organization. It is misunderstood. We can see that there's a desire to use it, but there's equally the amount of fear. So we had to spend a lot of time going through this. And in order to launch, we actually went very conservative with our guidelines. We basically went back and said, okay, look, you must not submit any customer or Planit data into any AI system. And this kept the legal and risk and compliance teams happy. However, it really did not make our employees happy, because they said, well, that really limits what I can do with these tools. So we're actually going through and updating this now to be around personally identifiable information, but there's a fairly complex process to define what is information we want to put into these systems. And look, we're not alone in these challenges. In fact, despite the fact that we had 87% of CIOs planning full Gen AI adoption, those same leaders only felt that 33% felt confident they could mitigate the risks. So we saw this firsthand. We were like, oh, we want to do it, but there's some risks. So the stakes are high, and we're going to see some shortcuts taken. And no one wants to be the first in the newspapers. So I just wanted to run through really quickly, what are some of the risks that we saw and our business was concerned about? So the first one is around IP and copyright. And this may be an extinction level event for Gen AI organizations, that have trained their data on information without permission. This is going to be exacerbated by the recent EU rulings, which says that any general purpose LLM must provide the data that it was trained on. They're a bit cagey on this. It tends to be a lot of copyrighted information that is maybe publicly available, but maybe didn't have permission to use on. In fact, there was an interview with the Sora CEO asking where they sourced the training videos for Sora, OpenAI's new video platform, and got some very cagey answers there. This is a great podcast. I highly recommend Decoder. Golna Kostashari, CEO of Reservoir, she owns a songwriting copyright. So this is a business that takes IP and monetizes it. So you can imagine her surprise when she used Claude, which is the AI chatbot from Anthropic, funded by Google and Amazon, and asked it to write her a song about country roads leading her home. Now, the good news is that we know that AI can write instant classics, because as soon as you start reading the words to this, you can, it feels like one of those songs that is going to stick around. Unfortunately, it's the John Denver song, basically word for word. The host said, you know what, there's an Anthropic lawyer right now freaking out in their car listening to this. Turns out he was right, because just a few days later, when I tried to ask the same question, it came back and said, I cannot produce full copyrighted songs. So the current models are insufficient to provide that attribution. And in fact, I tried again just recently in March when Claude 3 came out, and it is now writing me a new song, but we can see, the data's in there. It's still trying to get out. Take me home, old country roads. It reminds me of Jurassic Park. Life will find a way. That data in there will find a way to get out in strange and unusual ways. Now, this is a risk for you, and it's a risk for us, because in terms of our contracts, we have a specific clause that says we cannot include in our deliverables any software or IP rights which are owned by third parties. This is really hard because they're not providing attribution. It's been a while since anyone's asked us to write some song lyrics, but if we are generating material and putting it in either through misunderstanding it, or it's scraped, the tools have scraped information it shouldn't have, and we're pasting it in documents, this is a really worrying area from a risk point of view. The other big one is around data leakage. What happens if we put some information into and it gets out? Or what happens if we start training a model our employees benefit from? Now, we knew when we started this rollout that 20% of our employees were already using public GPT, and they didn't know what they were putting into it and what information could be leaked. And they were doing this whether we had an AI policy or not, because we didn't provide the training uplift. And this isn't a new problem. The concerns are legitimate, and they're happening whether using AI or not. So this is a recent report of the secrets leaked in the Python package repository. So despite all the training, despite all the best practice, that's not going down. You can probably see July 20 when maybe some COVID coders got in there and missed some things. But this is putting confidential information such as AWS keys, auth keys, Spotify keys, probably not as big a problem, but this allows access to further information. And this isn't done intentionally, well, which we hope not, but it's still happening because it is really hard. It kind of reminds me of the social media world, where I speak to my niece and she loves using social media. Now, the reward for her using it outweighs the risks of any information that she's giving that could give, that you really wouldn't want out there. So the value's there. And it's the same with our programmers. If you've got a piece of code and you want to optimize it, it's easy to paste it into these tools, get an answer back, and it's the results are so valuable that maybe you're not thinking clearly around what data you might be putting in there. And this is a real world problem, and this is one of the reasons why we went down the private instance route. The next one is around the quality of the output. So this is an amazing picture. If I told you this was from the latest Jurassic Park movie, you might believe me. This is actually generated by Midjourney from one of our consultants, our head of AI, Dean. And you'll notice this is the prompt that he had to use to get it. Now, earlier you would have seen a dinosaur with a man riding the dinosaur. That was, nothing compared to this, but the prompt for that was, show me a picture in a suit riding a dinosaur. This is an extremely detailed, covers the type of camera, the lens, the aperture setting to get this picture. So there's a lot of work that went into this. If I told you this was from the next FIFA cover, again, you probably, well, you definitely wouldn't believe me. This is an unfair picture from Stable Diffusion, but this is where we were just recently in terms of the quality of the output of these tools. You'll also notice the little squiggly area on there that looks a little bit like a Getty Images trademark watermark. Well, that is there. Because you can tell which data set they trained on, and there's a current lawsuit going on around that. A more close to home example for us was, we asked it, what's the model aims and objectives for TMMI? And this is a great example of hallucination. So Here they are. The model aims are as follows. There we are, 6 points, case closed. The trouble is these aren't actually what they are. They're not really close. So while this doesn't matter for generating a picture of a dinosaur, maybe that's a subjective thing. But if you ask this tool, what's the TMMI objectives, and copy that into a document, if you didn't know, you'd assume it was right. It gave you a very authoritative answer. So I think this is where the widening the gap comes in. So when I asked it, where did you get this from? Well, it came back and said, well, you know what? The information is based on my training. However, the information provided is a general understanding. This is the LLM's way of saying, look, I made it up. I mean, it doesn't say in the previous answer, hey, this is my best guess. I don't really know. I can't access it. I suggest you look it up. So unless you know what sort of answer you need to look for, it's really difficult to evaluate the quality. Even Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, comes back and says, this is a generative technology. It's a creative helper. Please don't rely on it for factual accuracy. The good news is we know that no one would rely on any tool and follow it blindly. I mean, this is still happening. People are still driving into lakes following their GPS. So we put in our AI policies and said, look, you must read and edit what's generated and uplifted to meet the standards. Do not copy and paste anything from the tools directly into your workspace. This is simple, but it's working really well. And this gets over the risk of the IP and copyright, and at least gets people thinking around the risk of poor quality output. As we rolled out Gen AI, we realized how much effort we needed to actually dedicate to getting this. So I'm going to pass over to Jared. Jared is going to dive a little bit more into the product that we rolled out for Gen AI called Amplify.
Thanks, Joel. Look, and despite all the actual internal fear that we faced as an organization from every single level, from the top levels, even from the actual individual users, we still did launch the application. And we actually launched it to all employees at once. As we said, we wanted to get rapid feedback. So this included both the internal support staff, so those working in HR and finance as an example, but also those using customer-facing consultants. So, our test engineers, our quality engineers, our performance and automation engineers. We actually rolled this out with a very flexible, interface to that. And the first release, really, we were focusing on enabling our staff to generate requirements analysis, those test scenarios, test case generation, very much a QE focus. We were looking to validate those assumptions that were made by what we can actually do from the QE space, as Joel highlighted earlier in that Gartner pyramid. And we wanted that to enable them, but we gave them a very free and flexible interface so that they could experiment freely, push the boundaries of what they can do, and find new ways of actually using this. And we gave it to them, that interface. We intentionally gave them an interface that was similar to ChatGPT, and that was really there to actually provide them a very familiar experience. So let's explore a little bit around what actually happened with that rollout. The first thing we did with this rollout was actually focused quite heavily on the technology. We focused on rolling out artificial intelligence, and that word intelligence actually set us up for some very high expectations from our users. The interface has a psychological impact on the users. It types out the answer like there's a person at the other end, and it even apologizes actually when you call it out for misunderstanding your questions. And it knew a lot of information about a lot of things. You could ask it to translate languages. You could ask it to write muffin recipes, poems, generate test scripts, or review code. So at times, it actually felt like you were talking to a real person, which is no surprise that we actually had users arguing with the tool. This is quite an interesting one that I found quite recently. We were reviewing some of how people are using this, and I could see that someone was getting very frustrated at the tool for not listening, and it was actually listening. So it's that concept of because you're almost tricked into believing that there is a real person at the other end, and it does actually appear intelligent, but not in an intelligent way that people would expect. So the image on the screen at the moment, you can see is quite an interesting one. We've actually asked it to generate an office desk with a keyboard and mouse, and it has literally done that. There is a keyboard and a mouse there. So it does understand you, and it does understand what you're asking, but it may not actually understand the full context. And for those who are on the call who've actually played with ChatGPT, you can actually see how easy it is to generate that and create that content. And that sort of provided us with a false hope for how quickly people would adopt this. We felt that it might actually make it easier. given that they can do anything they want with it, they would find the way to actually get the information. And we actually found it had the opposite effect. When they're given such a powerful tool, most users were actually at a loss how to use it usefully. I think if we rolled out a tool that only generated test cases or only had a very specific task, would have had a completely different experience. But rolling out the general purpose AI tool effectively meant that our staff were a bit at a loss, and they ended up focusing more on the intelligence component of the artificial intelligence than actually the value that it could provide. One of the biggest challenges and I guess the opportunities that we have with Gen AI is we've now effectively democratized programming. So up until now, we've always had to learn programming languages to speak to computers, so Scala or C# or Python, But now we're at a point where OpenAI or the GPT tools, they know our language. As I showed before, you can type it, you can talk to it, and it understands what you're trying to say. In a recent interview, actually, with NVIDIA's CEO, Jason Huang, he stated it is now our job to create a computing technology that nobody has to write code. And the programming language is actually a human language. And this is a big step forward. And this is actually quite a promising step forward and great in theory. But in reality, English language is actually terrible for communication. You saw those examples before where we asked it to do something and it literally did it, but it did it in the wrong way. I think a good example I like is if we take the famous kids song, which is there was a farmer who had a dog and Bingo was his name-o. I mean, that sounds very straightforward. We know how that works, but if you actually think about it, it doesn't actually clearly state is Bingo the farmer or the dog, because grammatically either of those two are correct. And so with formal languages, they give us a compilation error. So previously we'd enter in the wrong information and we'd know very quickly there's an issue with the grammar or the syntax or the context that we're trying to write. But with generative AI, the only way you can really know if it's misunderstood is by the quality of the answer. And this is something we misunderestimated, both in terms of the accessibility, but also just that false sense of security. Is we could point our teams at this with little to no training. They all speak English. They all type English. They should be able to make it work, but it didn't work. What we found with very quickly with Gen AI, through our own experience, is that every word and vector matters. And when you want that consistent, high quality output, you need to structure your prompts correctly. You're almost going full circle back to a formalized language. If you take, for example, the prompt on the screen, so this is by simply typing in, write me some test cases for a login function in Amplify. We can actually get it to easily generate test cases. But these are not in a format that I can use or an import into my test management tool. They're not even in actually a complete set of test cases. If you look closely, you'll see that there's no test case here for expired passwords. So it's given me something quite useful up front quite quickly and very easily, but there's still more to it that I actually need to get it to in the right format that I need. So when using Gen AI, our staff took quick to generate this content that looked good, but they soon realized it wasn't at the level of quality that they required. So then they were quick to actually announce that the output quality wasn't acceptable and the tool was useless. But if we jump through the next slide, we can actually see, this example here. By writing a more detailed prompt, you can get better output in terms of both the content and the format. So it's the same question, but I've actually provided with more details. I've said for the following conversation, I will provide you a requirement and I want you to generate the test cases. You should ensure that you generate the positive and negative test cases using equivalence partitioning and boundary analysis. And the response should be in a markdown table with the following headings. And then I go on to actually explain exactly what I want in each of those headings, the content and the format. Then I've said, write me some test cases for a login function. And it's done exactly what I wanted. I've now given it I've powered it to actually do this, generate the content, generate the format, simply by telling it exactly what I want. And that was one of the challenges we had, was people were assuming that the tool was intelligent, it would understand the context, and they weren't giving it the full information, and the results weren't that great. So what we've actually done is build a library of prompts to help accelerate our tasks to do our teams to do the tasks that they need. So this allows our staff to rapidly generate the high quality content and do it consistently with little effort and virtually no training in the prompt engineering space. And they can use these as starter points for new prompts, or they can even build them from scratch. Now, remember at this point, we've actually generated this actually showed us we generated some great quality output, right? But at this point, we're using an unrefined model. And so the knowledge that's being used is not ours. It's actually the same as what's on public GPT. So with these prompts alone, the results are great, but how do we further improve the quality of the output? Just jump forward. Thank you. So Gartner actually believes that the only way you can obtain a sustainable competitive advantage is with your own data. The public models are great, fantastic. As you said, we can get some great value, real value out of this quite quickly. But guess what? Our competitors have access to them as well. So you're going to need to use your own data. And this is where the risks increase alongside the technical complexity and even the complexity around the ethics and the legal complexity as well. So at Planit, we have over 25 years of testing and quality engineering knowledge, and we wanted to get this into the system to really drive out and generate that best quality output. Now, you might remember earlier, Joel mentioned that 87% of CIOs are jumping forward and going into full Gen AI adoption in Australia and New Zealand, yet they don't have the data ready for AI. So 96% of organisations say they're not AI ready, and guess what? We weren't either. We found that out quite quickly. We needed to spend a lot of time identifying and cleaning and formatting that information to allow our platform to ingest it. And we also wanted to get this information into the system in a way that allowed us to grow the system and be flexible and drive those continuous improvements. So the approach that we took is to use retrieval augmented generation, which is also called RAG. So this approach essentially uses a database of curated information and data and to enrich each interaction. So every time someone interacts with Amplify, it will search the index of the data, which is our curated information, and match the related content and send that through to the GPT models alongside the original prompt. And this means that the GPT model will then use both the public domain data, the data that we've provided it, the prompt details, and it'll use that all together to generate that high quality content. So for example, if I was to ask it to generate test scripts on an SAP module, it would search the index, find our existing SAP test script accelerators, and pass that back alongside the original prompt. And the generated quality then is not just what we're seeing from the public GPT, but also our previous existing content, and that's using that all together to make a much better result. Now, we found that the population of this index is primarily a manual task, and we also discovered that in the same way that user prompts can significantly change the generation quality, the wording and the format of the data in the index can significantly impact that as well. So there's a lot of work required to get that in the right format. I actually love this picture. I think it's probably showcases Gen AI perfectly. So when you first look at it, I think it looks great. But then you start to notice actually the man's on two horses, which is a bit strange. But then you look a little bit further and you go, hang on a second. His legs are actually blended into the arms of the horseman. And I think at first glance, a lot of the Gen AI content that we see looks amazing until you dig deeper into it. And we did see this big improvement by using the RAG generation. And it was great, but it wasn't perfect. And some of the challenges that we had around that was actually the broad scope of users of the system. So RAG, we find, works really good for small use cases. So for example, a chatbot, which knows about all of your company and its products. The small scope and restricted audience means that it's able to respond accurately and consistently to those customer inquiries. But we're building a Gen AI-powered quality engineering platform for a wide range of users. And those users require a vastly different set of topics and content tone and output formats. So as I mentioned before, in the organization, we've got automation engineers, we have quality engineers, we've got performance engineers, we've also got the sales, the account management, people and culture, everyone in the organization using the system. So the challenge we have is if, for example, a salesperson comes along and says, explain to me Planit's best practice approach to automating tests in Selenium, and it should provide me with an output tailored to a sales pitch, very positive, lots of hyperbole. However, if you look, from an automation person asking the same question, they don't want any of that sales hyperbole. They want step-by-step technical guidelines. But with the RAG covering all of those users and all of those roles, we were finding that it was matching the same content on the keywords. And effectively what was end up happening is that the responses coming back that were being generated probably weren't fit for purpose for either of those two roles. It wasn't quite good enough for the sales because it contained some of that technical aspect, and it wasn't quite good enough for the technical teams because it contained a little bit of the sales space. So it was good, but not perfect. So where to next? So looking back on that rollout journey, we introduced prompt templates and retrieval augmented generation to reduce those barriers and improve the content generation. Bless you. But this path is a long one and rapidly changing. We will continue to build on that prompt library, with the staff having now the ability to actually create and share that community. So we're building that out. We're expecting that to grow significantly as I've got those templates to work with and they learn how to do the prompt engineering. Another big focus on us is actually improving that RAG content generation. Whilst we have some challenges at the start, there is still value in this and we are driving that even further. So we're actually investigating ways to improve this for specific roles. And this will likely be through a combination of the index management, the prompt engineering, and the data enrichment. Like I said, things are moving fast. There's new technology that's coming available very soon every day. So we're working with that, trying to see what's on the horizon and how that can help solve our problems. Training is an ongoing activity. We've got self-taught and trainer-led sessions. We need to get all of our staff up to a level of competence in using these tools, while at the same time, we want to reduce those barriers to entry and make it easier for them. So bringing it closer to their current ways of working. One of the plugins that we're working on at the moment is for the test automation development workbenches so that our users can actually leverage Amplify to generate the automation code without even needing to leave their native tool set. So this will give them a Copilot style tool. If you're aware of GitHub Copilot, give them a Copilot designed tool designed specifically for the test automation. Now, if you recall earlier, with that pyramid, again, there was a number of activities in that life cycle that we were looking to prove out whether or not we could do that. Within this journey, we've actually proven that we can use Gen AI to automate the delivery of most of them with high levels of generation quality. It doesn't completely replace the human. We do want to keep the human in the loop. And we've run multiple studies as well, which have actually shown that with a reduction of about 25% of effort in the creation of test cases and test scripts. And that's to an equal or higher level of quality. So it takes a lot less time, but we're also actually able to increase the scope that's covered in those. So now we actually want to take that next step and start integrating Amplify into the life cycle of the QE life cycle and doing these activities automatically. So making it completely transparent to our users. Now, our vision is for QE delivery that uses Gen AI for the analysis of the requirements, the definition of the test cases, the test scripts, the creation of the test data and the automation code, as well as supporting the execution process through the rapid generation of rapid generation and updates to test assets. So we're working with integrating with Jira and the other test management tools to streamline this. We want to remove that swivel chair input between the tools and make it a virtually invisible experience for our staff. And this benefits obviously our customers as it gives them a faster time to market with greater quality, but less time and less effort, all by using generative AI. Hand back to you, Joel.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jared. So look, what are our key takeaways? Well, look, firstly, we needed to increase the awareness of AI at all levels in the business. We needed to do this to counter the fear, uncertainty, and help our employees understand what it is and how it works. As Jared pointed out, this isn't just our consultants, but it's our operational employees. Content we're told that couldn't go into an AI tool was okay in an email. Yeah, look, this is a really important one for us to get right. The next one was around, we underestimated that requirement and that commitment to training and enablement, and we've really learned a lot on, the accessibility and familiarity of a chatbot in an English language would require no training. We were wrong, and we're working really hard on that as well. Look, thirdly, it follows on from number 2 is that we needed help to get our teams to ask better questions, and that's where that prompt library came in. So prompts are a structured language, whether we really want them to be or not. The last one is the tools must be useful and where the work is. So that's where Jared talked about implementing and integrating the tools into Jira and into our tooling IDEs around automation. And finally, look, we are continuously experimenting and measuring those results so that we can find out what the benefits are. And that's one of the keys to our journey. What our solution looks like today is not what our solution will look like tomorrow, 3 months, 6 months. We may bin the whole lot and start again, but we're on the journey and really continuously experimenting. So thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And we wanted to leave some time for some questions as well.
Thank you both, Joel and Jared, for a really good insight into that. If you have any questions, just make sure you post there. I'll pick up something and start asking them myself. So actually, I think to start with, you mentioned about finding people using a data set, in an informal way, using these chatbots, when you started this and that you became aware of it. So what was the kind of initial reaction by the entire team, and what was the steps that you take to make it formalized? Did you implement a specific training program or an upskilling process for for an informal to formal ways of using this within your company?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think the key for us is that, while we could easily see that people are using tools like ChatGPT, there's an amazing array of tools out there on the web. So in terms of trying to track what people were accessing, it was really difficult. And that sort of created that fear. The other element is that, AI is built into so many of the tools and apps that we do. So, if you want to go down the total ban route, I see in Zoom, there's a little AI companion button. Am I allowed to push that button in a total AI ban, or am I allowed to have LinkedIn rewrite my post that's public anyway? So I think one of the keys was sort of getting the business across the view that, AI is everywhere and it's integrated into lots of things. It's a little bit more visible at the moment because it's being used, the mechanism of AI is being promoted so much. The AI companion doesn't tell you anything. Why would, that's not the button they should have put in there as a product. But they know if they don't have AI in the interface, the business is missing. So I think for us, the key was just that education piece of saying it is everywhere. It's in all these tools. Let's look at where the concerning areas are for us. It's not in the LinkedIn or the Zoom button, but it's in tools where people are going to take that data and put that data in places where they shouldn't. So it was really a data-driven approach that we took from a policy and guidelines point of view. But it required a lot of education at all levels.
Right. And you also mentioned about I think Jared, you mentioned about English as the as the next generation of programming language, which seems to be really how the entire era has begun from last year. But how does it pale in terms of, I know that we are living in New Zealand in terms of this context, but obviously you might have distributed teams or anywhere across the world. How does this, is that a barrier that you guys have faced in terms of the non-language English speakers? Because most of the technical guys that I had were not really good at English, but they were really good at code. So I'm just trying to understand your learnings from that as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, luckily, Amplify understands multiple languages, so users can actually interact with their native languages, which is great. But you are right, is that most people sort of resort back to English as the language, particularly when they're using in the business world. And that's where we do see a lot of challenges with the ambiguities of English, because you and I might, you might, as an example, I'm talking to someone who's English as a second language, and I know from the context of what we're talking about and where our current position is, that context actually enriches the content of that conversation significantly. So I can actually understand what they're trying to say, even if they're not using full, pure English grammar. But the AI tools don't know that context, and that's one of the biggest challenges we've found, is that because they don't know the context of where they are and what they're doing, and people are making assumptions, that the quality output isn't as high as what it should be. So we're trying to take away a little bit of that context and build that into those prompt templates, but also driving that training with users to say, look, you need to tell it, you need to explain to it like it's a 5-year-old, and be very clear and very explicit of what you want to get, because it doesn't know. So there are some challenges with that. We hopefully overcome that. But as I said, from a pure language perspective, it does understand a number of other languages, Spanish or Chinese even, and even you can even have it translate from one to another.
I think just to add on to that, Jared, as well, it's also because you can only evaluate whether it was a good question based on the answer. We're encouraging our employees more to have that conversation as opposed to just asking a question. You wouldn't ask somebody a question, not quite get the right answer and go, oh, okay, and just walk away. You'd ask some clarifying questions and say, oh, actually, okay, sorry, maybe I didn't explain myself properly. So we're really trying to get that into the training element as well, that, this isn't a one question, one answer scenario. This is a, build on it and take those learnings and say, okay, I didn't get what I want. I need to be more clear, and understand it is a learning process, and that's what Jared talked about, the intelligence. The expectations are still probably too high from most users, that it's going to give you the right
and
answer.
yeah, And I'm going back to the personal data, like, or customer data that you guys have been talking about. But how do you guys, like, it's based on Stephanie's question, like, how do you control or monitor or censor individuals, like, not enter this customer data into your existing AI would be great to track and monitor, but what if they are trying to enter into a far better system that they're either convenient or they feel like, they are like, they would get more value out of it? How do you censor this kind of behavior?
Yeah, it's a great question. In terms of, we have controls in the organization on our laptops that, identifies that personally identify information, whether it's going into emails or different systems. However, what we wanted to do with the tools is also add that into the AI platform as well to provide some filtering. So Jared can provide some more details on the filtering within Amplify itself.
Yes, there's two levels of filtering on that one. First one is on the input. So we actually have effectively a keyword filter that prevents our staff from putting in customer sensitive data. So we need to set those keywords up, and they might be customer URLs, for example, or important words specific to a customer. So if they end up putting that in, that'll get blocked. It doesn't even go through to the GPT system at all. It gets flagged as a violation. It's not even logged. Well, there's a violation log, but the other filter we have is on the actual GPT. So there's a quality content filtering on that. So any explicit wording or sensitive information or I guess illegal activities will get blocked from being generated. So that actually prevents our staff from generating instructions to make drugs as an example, right? So there's a protection on that level as well. So this is an area that we're trying to continually build out and ensure that we're actually protecting our customers in this space. So all of the data is actually held in our own private instances, and we're looking at, again, adding new controls into that from a customer level as well. So there's no cross-contamination.
There are some enterprise tools that are starting to get rolled out around AI governance within the enterprise. So yeah, this is an emerging area because it is not an easy solve.
Fantastic. So you guys are moving into an enterprise kind of like, testing this software tool into the market, but like, how do you, what is the way that you're selling it as the product? Like, what is your core product that you think is based on this? Because you're already using a couple of other systems. Like, how would you define the product from in this particular case?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, in terms of the rollout for this, the concept behind Amplify was actually internal and aimed at our employees only. So this wasn't a tool that we designed to sell or productize. This is a tool that we designed to say, okay, look, we are a professional services business, and we provide great outcomes and partner with our customers to improve their quality and accelerate their delivery. So how can we do that in a more effective way? It also allowed us to get on the journey and build that. So in terms for us, I'd say, the product is our solutions and our offerings, and we're using AI to augment that. However, being on that journey, we've actually learnt a lot around, rolling out AI, testing with AI. So we're actually working with La Trobe University in Melbourne around better evaluating the outputs. And we've got an ISTQB training course that we run as well around becoming an ISTQB certified AI tester. So, the amount of avenues around AI, I mean, we're specifically talking about Gen AI today, but, it's such a broad and wide field. That, this is really taking over. So for us, it's around getting our hands dirty and learning as much as possible, as well as being able to speed up the delivery. So the product itself is internally facing. It is, it's ISO 27001 compliant. It uses our single sign-on and secure for that reason. It was designed for us to be a test bed. And as I mentioned earlier, that product may look completely different in 6 months, 12 months. It may be completely irrelevant in 6 or 12 months, depending on where, the market is moving so quickly. But we wanted to get our hands dirty quickly rather than, wait for the perfect solution here.
Cool.
I think if I just jump in, sorry, I just want to quickly jump in as well, just addressing a question I saw pop up from Blake, which is, as a product owner, what do you consider to be the product? And sort of just touching on what Joel's saying there. So for me, the product is not Amplify specifically. For me, the product is rapid QE delivery using AI, and Amplify just happens to be what's powering it at the moment. So we as an organization are a software testing quality engineering organization. We're professional services. For us, that product is having the best delivery models and the best staff who are powered by AI that our competitors can't compete with. And that's effectively what we're trying to build here, is that market leading quality engineering delivery powered by AI, not
Yeah,
amplify.
right. And we're talking about like, the kind of the streaks you've done, like, how does, like, not every organization, like, is going to have that kind of level of knowledge within, or like an expertise to create their own thing. Like, for example, Pauline has asked, like, as a small NGO, we're starting to develop a secure database with, like, good prompts, and even in terms of the data, like, how do we kind of make some of this learnings accessible to early stage, like, either tech companies or non-tech companies, especially, like, I'm more focused on non-tech companies, because tech companies have an idea of what they have to, where they have to start.
Yeah, look, there's several, I guess, options in that space where there's off-the-shelf products that you could use, which provide rapid time to value, fast time to market without the heavy investment. So, even just looking at the ChatGPT, OpenAI's enterprise products, they do offer some high levels of privacy with the paid services. So there's an option there that you can actually build that out using those off-the-shelf products. And then once your organization matures in this space, you could look to developing your own. For us, the OpenAI option wasn't really suitable for our use case, so we investigated, but we didn't pursue any further, which is why we've developed our own. But absolutely, there are some off-the-shelf services that are available that are very powerful and still secure.
Right, right. You spoke about widening, like, the widening of the gap, actually, in terms of, like, I just want to pick and connect the question that somebody has asked about. Yeah, Johan Hope has asked about, like, because it currently needs a bit of domain knowledge and code writing knowledge to validate the Gen AI responses as well. So does introducing this technology in the workplace, would it add a big barrier towards junior roles? Because this is also in terms of, like, I read about in I think in Decode or something, like how the junior and senior roles is going to be so much widened because of this phase of integration. What do you have for the junior, like junior entry levels and the senior points, like as a point of knowledge sharing?
It's a really big challenge for us, and and for everyone in that industry. You think back and think, well, how are our juniors going to get upskilled? To me, it's fairly. It comes back to sort of traditional sort of core values, which is the same way that you learn programming, whether you learnt it from books or whether you learn it from Stack Overflow. The concept really comes from that feedback. Tools like Copilot are helping speed things up, but I think we just need to set the expectation for our employees that when they're junior, that their velocity doesn't need to be as high, as much of an increase as our seniors, and give them the time and still do that human pair programming that we've always done, that's worked really well, and that mentoring, and say, hey, I've generated some code here, I've got, and it's like, great, here's the things for you to look at. So probably what we'll find is that you'll move more into a debugging mode of code and reading and understanding that code more than actually writing from scratch. I think that sort of skill will start to drop off, because you'll be able to generate 90% of what you need very, very quickly. And then the key is to say, okay, well, does this actually meet what I need it to do? Is it optimized? Is it secure? And work through that way. So those core skills are there, as much as we'd love to see. And you would have seen the big news on Devon, the world's first software engineer. And it's great for things that are I think Billy Corgan describes the PT in ChatGPT as standing for parlor trick, because it's very impressive, and you can show somebody and say, hey, it can read an API and it can create some code. Most of our enterprise applications aren't as simple as that. And the tools at the moment aren't great. I mean, if you saw the video of Devon, I mean, the thing uses print lines to debug its code. So it's still trying to do things in a very human, step-by-step way. While we're early days on that, I think it's a long way to go. So contrary to NVIDIA's CEO, I would still recommend that good coding practices is really important. And for us, it's around just not setting that expectation that pair programming and that human interaction should be replaced by AI.
Fantastic. I think we've come to the time. I'm going to ask one more question for the generic audience, and if the other audience are feeling like, who wants to stay, we can maybe ask 2 or 3 questions after that as well. So, I think in terms of the generic one, what is the kind of demand, like adoption rate, in terms of these technology in New Zealand? Because I know we are far behind in terms of other scales of things, and I think who wanted to ask that? Vic. What is the demand of AI in New Zealand, and how can we even be prepared for that as an individual or as an organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of what we saw, so we asked a few questions on the roadshow. So across New Zealand, we had around 26% of the businesses and organizations that came to those roadshows said that AI was actively encouraged for everyone, and a further 41% were piloting in parts. So you're talking about 60% of attendees who are experimenting with or piloting AI. In fact, there was 16% who had a total ban. So there's a bit of a mix. I think when we say total ban, that's still still probably not happening. So the demand there is there. Everyone is going through that view. As we said, 87% of CEOs are full in on it. But that level of risk, I think, is really misunderstood in a lot of organizations. So we see that a lot of the pilots are separate from customer data or separate from key data in order to experiment safely and get those quick value benefits. So, choosing tools like GitHub Copilot to get a really quick bit of value. But it's only so long before we then start asking what's the next benefit. And, as we said, data is the key there. So we're on a bit of a journey.
Fantastic. All right, team. If I think we have come to the general conclusion of things. If people are going to go away, thank you. People who are passionate about it, maybe you can stay for 5 more minutes. You can ask maybe 2 or 3 questions, and then we can call it off. So I'm going to go into one more maybe IP question that Andy Masters has put in, do you think our attachment to IP might actually be challenged? Won't humans get overall better answers and value out of this if we share more data to the common pool?
It's a fantastic question, and a big sort of how humanity works. I mean, I think one of the interesting things here is that we're going through the phase now where so much of the content, both online and in code repositories, I heard a stat that GitHub, 40% of the code in there was AI generated. We see that Stack Overflow had a significant reduction in activity on the site. So what I fear that we enter a feedback loop where sort of AI is reading AI generated code and it thinks that's good, so then it produces that. Then people think that's good, so then they reuse it. So and I think it's the same with an IP point of view. If there's 46 Harry Potter books out there, does it sort of lose some of the charm? It's a really existential question for us, and I believe we're in it, whether we we've got tickets to that ride, whether we want to or not. But at the end of the day, I think that the IP side of things and that knowledge and human value that comes into that curiosity is always going to be key. I think that testing is going to be around for a long time because of that. My hope is that we just accelerate some of the tasks. No one likes sitting there writing boundary value analysis tests or equivalence partitions. But we love destructive exploratory testing, and I reckon I can find a defect here. So but it's anyone's guess at this point.
Yeah, I think particularly with IP and copyright, I mean, it's obviously a commercial-driven conversation. So as Joel and I were discussing this a bit earlier, and one of the examples was, you could put something up on YouTube that could be a complete rip-off of another a copyrighted material, and nobody's going to care until you start making money off it. And then they start saying, well, hang on a second, that should be my money, not yours. So it'd be interesting to see what that impact is if we're all sharing this and using this IP and copyrighted material to, some commercial gain, but the gain is so far spread that the copyright authorities can't actually challenge everyone. Then, maybe they can't reinforce it. And then effectively you've got the same situation that we have in other countries that don't follow those international copyright laws, where it's effectively the Wild West. So that might be the case. We might start seeing that where it's just not reinforceable.
Right, right. Maybe last question, and then we'll wrap it up. So, in terms of integrating this technology into your workflows, like quality engineering workflows, did you take in phases, and like what kind of like really like challenges that you faced, or good or bad things, both things in different phases as well?
Yeah, so we're obviously looking at the first phase is the high value, low effort tasks. So things like generating test cases and test scripts where they're manual effort, and we know from our experience that AI works quite well in that translation from a requirement to test cases and test scripts. So we've run multiple studies on that. We've built out those prompts, and our next step is to then integrate our Amplify into Jira, where we could actually get that full workflow. So the requirements come through and they're automatically analyzed, and feedback comes through on the quality of those. And then we can then take that next step again, automated, to generate Gherkin code and then automation code as well. So that sort of flow around that life cycle, you may remember, is where we're focusing our effort on now. And we're just going from left to right through the life cycle. We're actually seeing that in parallel, we're running with the automation space as well. So again, generating automation code is relatively easy because of the way that these tools work. So we want to take that back into the closer to the staff and create those plugins to help them access that without having to open up a new tool. So there's sort of areas that we're working on at the moment, is actually bringing it closer to the user and trying to automate a lot of that, so that the user is not, I guess, isn't hindered by it, or hasn't have to make a conscious choice to use it.
Yeah, we also have another platform called Dot, and Dot is a data aggregation tool, and it's designed to look more at metrics, predictive insights, analysis based on our test metrics. So pulling in things like our automation information, our test scripts, our defects, and looking at the overall picture of where we're over testing, where we're under testing, and looking towards a predictive analysis of what would be the effort provided, or where do we think the defect density is going to be, which tests should we run next. So that's a larger, more ambitious project that we're actually trialing with a number of customers at the moment. So we're using Gen AI in terms of, it's a very quick return. It's very easy to implement these systems and get them up and running very quickly. But we're looking at AI at all different levels as well, of how we can, how we can improve that process and reduce wasted effort and optimize the results we get for our customers.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, team. I think we'll wrap it up. Although we have so many questions, I have so many questions to ask. I think we have come to a great discussion and some in-depth thing as well. But I listened to one of your, I think, Cyber Tuesday podcast from the QE Advantage with Ferd and Tafline, and they were talking about how quality engineering has its roots in software engineering, and like how they are two or intrinsically linked. And I think hopefully using these many tools that we're coming up, and the ways that the testers and the next generation of coders and developers are going to come and kind of blend this two together, and it happens at the same time, and it gets easier moving forward. But thank you for such a informed, getting us walking through that. And if anyone have any questions, please write to Joel. We're gonna attach, if you have an email, we're gonna send the recording and the contact details of these team, and you can definitely reach out to them straight. And thank you all for being here and listening to this conversation, and hope to see you all in the April monthly event as well as the lunchtime event as well. So look forward to our website. Thank you again. Hope you have a great day ahead, and I'll ask Jared and Joel stay in the line while others can kindly leave and have your fantastic day. Continue your fantastic days ahead. Thank you all. We're
Thanks
gonna
so
wait
much.
for a bit.